All right, welcome back to the aisle. I'm Trista, and today I want to share with you a step-by-step guide on how to create your own budget. So we do a lot of budget talks. We talk about budget trends. We talk about why things cost the way that they cost. But as I was preparing for this week's episode, it dawned on me probably a better place to start for this would be how to create your own wedding budget. So we're going to break down building a budget that feels intentional and kind of walks you through what should go where. Like, how do you allocate what to what area? We want to make sure that before you're dress shopping or booking a venue or booking your wedding planner, you want to understand what you're actually spending. So before we get into all of this on this week's episode, we are going to get into a little personal life updates. So for me, as many of you guys know, I have a lot of kids, the youngest one being a sweet little Aria. If you guys follow on Instagram, she is quite the little ham. She's getting ready to turn 4, and she's finally sleeping in her own bed now, which is amazing. It's been a long journey. She's probably one of the most difficult of the kids to get trained for sleeping. She didn't sleep through the night until she was 3. It's just been a long journey. She's a really super active young lady, and sleep is just not really something that she prefers. So we're super excited. Huge win in the family. Let's see what else is going on. If you guys have been following along, you know that I did get Lipo 360 earlier this year, so I'm still on my little recovery journey there. I am pretty soon going to start kind of posting a little bit more about this, like befores and afters. It's just been a while because I was kind of unsure, so I don't want to talk about something and post about it if I'm like not recommending it, but I am getting to a better place where I'm like moving around better, feeling a little better. It's still kind of just like uncomfortable, but nothing too crazy there. I also want to talk about my New Year's resolution, which was to be really mindful and intentful on where my energy is going and what cups I'm pouring into, because I'm just naturally a giving, caring person. And earlier this year, I did a podcast on understanding the difference between people that like you and people that like what you can do for them, and not condemning people that are like that, because I feel like it's just a very human trait, but understanding your position in that and not overly filling into people that don't necessarily really care too much about you. They just care about the benefits that they can reap from you. And so if that interests you at all, definitely go back a couple episodes and listen to that. But I just wanted to do a friendly reminder because it's still something that I'm really actively making decisions on every day, and it's helpful. It's really helpful. So if you guys set some really cool New Year's resolutions or goals, circle back around to them. We're a month and a half into the year. It's so crazy because January took a long time to finish, and February we're like halfway through it already. So I don't really know how that all happened, but circle back around to your goals. Do it weekly so that you don't lose sight of it. Track your progress and make sure that you are actually making those changes and those better kind of life habits. Let's talk about BTS recap. We are getting ready for our first wedding of the year. No, second wedding of the year. First wedding of the year was out in Cabo, which was published in Loverly already, which was absolutely amazing. We've gotten so many inquiries from that wedding just because of how gorgeous the design was. Our next wedding is local here in Scottsdale, so that comes up at the end of this month. We have lots of travel visits being planned for all of our destination weddings that are coming up. My first trip of the year will be to Houston. Some of the other girls on the team are going to Northern California, Cabo, LA. So we've got kind of a widespread turn there, but lots of good things happening. Another BTS update I've been kind of talking about is like my team and the decreasing in size. And I've been really open about how my business took a huge turn during COVID, and I tripled in size in the amount of weddings I was doing and also in the team size that I had. So I went from having 2 employees to having 8 employees in a couple of years. well, actually in like 1 year time, but it lasted for about a couple of years. And now things have kind of like reset and gone back to like a normal. And I was talking to one of my friends that owns a catering company, and he was saying it's like chasing the white horse. It's like you get an influx of business, and then instead of like changing your process and procedures, you hire more people. And then because you've hired more people, now you need to continuously get more business. And either way, it's watered down the quality of what you stand for and what you really want to do, because you're just constantly chasing one with the other instead of like stopping, resetting, redoing process and procedures, understanding that it's just a quick influx, it's not a forever trend, and adjusting that way. So for all of my entrepreneurs and business girlies out there, I feel like that's such a valuable piece of information, and something that I wish I would have known during a big growth spurt. And I can tell you guys, just I've been in business for over 15 years now, and everything cycles and trends. So you have big like peaks, and then you have valleys, and it kind of goes in a circle. And the more that you've gone through it, you can kind of start predicting when this is going to happen. And the best way to be able to protect yourself is to understand when those trends are happening again, and to put process and procedures in place. So whether it's things growing or things falling, in either way, understanding that you got to move and make adjustments, but that doesn't necessarily mean hiring more people, because that's just a vicious cycle that I was in for about 6 years now. And now that I'm coming out of it, I can't even tell you what a better person I am just in life in general. I'm like loving and finding that spark again for, you know, what I do for a living. And it just means so much to me, because I was getting lost, you know, I was feeling a little bit off, and it really just went into being so drained from managing so many people, and I just didn't want to. So that's just a little side note, separate from what this podcast episode is about. But I do feel like there's just value in sharing insight, because I really wish that I would have heard that a couple years ago. But all that aside, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. So again, just to recap, this episode we're talking about how to create your budget. It's one of the most stressful parts of wedding planning. And if you don't have a budget and a financial plan going into this, it is just a mess. It's an absolute nightmare, especially if you do not have unlimited funds. You just, it really takes a lot of the joy away from things if you're not on track with how much you can actually spend. A lot of couples don't overspend because they're careless. They just truly have no idea how quickly things can add up in wedding planning, and they truly have no idea how expensive weddings can get. So we want to talk about how to build this budget and really track where your money is going. Just kind of going over my notes here. Okay. When you're first getting started, the first thing you want to do is have conversations with budget contributors. Now, some of our couples, it's just the bride and groom that are paying for the wedding. Some of my couples, it is bride and groom and bride's parents and groom's parents, maybe grandparents. There might be a lot of different places where budget funds are coming from. So regardless of what your situation is, you need to schedule out a call or a meeting or a talk to fully understand who's responsible for what. If there are both sets of parents that are contributing to budget, you're gonna want to understand what they're comfortable with. So some families are lucky enough to have like a super rich mom or dad, and they're just giving you, 500 grand and do with it what you may. But then there are other more common situations to where maybe bride's parents are able to give 20,000, groom's parents are able to give 10,000. Okay, so now how do we come up with the rest? What are we all comfortable with, and what does this look like? I have also had times when groom's parents are covering the bar, bride's parents are covering the food. Things are kind of divvied up there. So maybe it's not a set amount, but there's just certain things that people want to be responsible for, and that works as well. But whatever the case may be, you just want to make sure that the conversations are being had, things are being documented, and then you're going from there. It's just a responsible way to get into this. And once you understand what the all-in number is, then we're going to take that and we're going to break this down for your entire wedding. First things first, once you have that number, is that number going just to wedding day, or is that going for wedding weekend? Also, is this just expenses for wedding, or does this also need to include attire, travel, rings, honeymoon, so on and so forth? So you have to also determine what this all-in number is going to include. For the sake of simplicity for this episode, we are going to assume that this all-in number includes wedding day only. And if you have questions on how to kind of navigate and go through other parts of wedding weekend, just let me know, because I can definitely help you out with that. But for now, again, just to kind of streamline things and keep everybody on the same page, we're going to be talking about what this all covers for wedding day. A big part of your all-in number is understanding what this is cost per person, okay? So your guest count is going to drastically affect what your overall spend is. And again, your overall spend is going to drastically affect how many guests you can have. So there's so many times when I start with new bride consultations and they're like, yeah, we're going to have 200 guests there, and our wedding budget is $80,000. And I'm like, okay, for 200 guests, quick math, your food and beverage is going to be really close to that, if not that, for 200 guests. So you're already off big time, like really, really, really big. So you have to be realistic with the number you're going to be spending, and then the number of guests that are going to be included. When you look at our page, typical average wedding spend for the level of design that we do, again, we're not an ultra luxury. We are like regular luxury, I guess you would say. And our average spend is between $1,500 and $2,500 per guest. So if there's 100 guests coming, you're going to want to have at least $150,000 to $250,000 all in for your overall budget. So again, understanding the relationship between the all-in budget and the overall guests is crucial. Because one of the two is going to need to be adjusted if it's not really making sense. And now the number that I gave with the $1,500 to $2,500 per guest, that doesn't mean that's what this has to be. There are absolutely ways to do this a lot less. And then of course there's ways to do that a lot more, but I'm just giving you a pinpoint for what you see on our pages and what that kind of equates to be. When you are breaking down your wedding budget, the very first thing that you're going to do is understand that 50% of your budget is going to go to venue, food, and beverage. That is also going to be including the service fees and taxes that are going into everything. So if you have $100,000 to spend on your wedding, $50,000 is going to go to venue, food, beverage, and service fees and taxes. Again, when I'm talking about things like this, there are ways around this. There are times when this could be a little bit less, and there are times when this could be more. But if you're making a responsible budget, you're going to want to stay around that amount. If you are going a lot more over that, it's tricky, because that probably means that your guest count is a little bit too high. And that means that it's going to be really difficult to then fit the whole huge list of other things that need to go into that other 50% of your budget. So what I recommend is understanding that half of your budget is going to be allocated towards your venue, food, and beverage. Okay. Next up, the next biggest chunk that is going to be allocated to one specific area is design, florals, and rentals. And that's going to come in at about 20% of your budget. So again, this could be a sliding scale. And later on in this episode, we're going to be talking about priorities and what is most important to you. Because some people, the visual aesthetic of things is not going to be important to them. And some people, that's everything. So keep in mind that I'm going for what we typically see and reporting on how we structure out budgets, which really helps a lot. And our clients tend to think that pretty much everything is important in the wedding. So it's kind of it's a good number to kind of go off of. And this is going to include your florals, your rentals, your lighting, your draping, the installations, the labor that all goes into this. And that is, again, about 20% of that budget after your venue, food, and beverage is done. Next up is going to be photography, videography, and entertainment. This is going to be about 15% of your budget. Now, let's say that, again, going into priorities a little bit later on this after I break everything down, let's say that these items are more important than your design and aesthetics, then we're going to flip-flop those numbers. But either way, one is going to be about 20%, the other is going to be 15%. So this is going for photography, videography, DJ, band, any type of like performance and entertainment, sound production elements, those kind of things are going to all fall into this, which is going to be about 15% of your budget. Now, when I first started in this industry, photography, videography, and DJ was a lot lower in price than what the average that I'm seeing now. And it gets kind of tricky because entry level pricing has just raised. It's just kind of gotten a lot higher, but this is about what you're going to want to allocate for this. Now, this is kind of a lot of different vendors lumped into this 15%, but again, you're going to want to take priorities into consideration. So if photography is super important to you and you don't really care about videography as much, then you're going to want to scale within those percentages to make it make sense for what is important to you. Your wedding planner is going to be about 10% of your budget. A lot of times, our pricing typically ranges between $13,000 to $20,000 for our packages. There's a lot of times when I'll have new bride consults and they're like, okay, so I have a $60,000 budget, but I really want you to be the planner. And I will tell them right off the top, it doesn't make sense. Like, in no way, shape, or form should you spend more than about 10%. Of course, this can fluctuate a little bit, but you need everything to stay on track in order for your wedding planning process to make sense. If your wedding planner is eating up most of your budget, that means in your mind, you think that because you hired a more expensive wedding planner, they're going to be able to give you the wedding of your dreams, when in all actuality, your wedding planner needs to be good and really sharp at what they do, but they can't create something outside of the budget means. You know what I mean? Like, there's not like any magic happening there. So you definitely have to keep that into consideration, that hiring a very expensive wedding planner when you have a stiff budget doesn't mean that your wedding is going to then look like all of the weddings that you see on their page. It means that your expectations are not in scale with what's really going on. So just giving it to you really raw on this part, make sure that that number stays around about a 10% of your overall budget. You're also going to want to understand the services that a wedding planning offers. Maybe day of coordination is what fits into your budget. That's okay. Then you need to stay in that area. But again, it all has to just make sense. You don't want to overspend in one area thinking that it's going to overcompensate and like make some miracle happen, because it's just not. The next part is going to be your beauty and personal details. So wedding, hair and makeup trial run, your hair and makeup, any alterations, and this is going to be about 5% of your overall budget. So definitely keep that in mind. If you have to fit attire into this, like your wedding gown, then you're going to want to move this up to about 10% and just kind of scale accordingly to that. Then we have your stationery. This is going to be 5% of your budget as well. So your stationery is your save the dates, your invitations, and then your wedding day signage and printable items. So your programs, your menus, your escort cards, your place setting cards, your bar menus, any decals, dance floor wraps, anything like that, that's going to come into about 5%. Stationery adds up, guys. There's a lot of different add-ons and things that make these really cool wow factors. So don't underestimate the expense that comes from there. Okay, it's very important that you're realistic with how much this is costing in order to be a responsible person planning their wedding. Okay, so now that we have the breakdown and like kind of like a pie chart on what's going to go into what area, and the reason why I chose to do this as percentages and not actual numbers is because there's no such thing as how much does a wedding cost. There are so many different variables that go into this, and I don't want this information to be just for a budget bride, and I don't want this information to be for somebody that has unlimited funds. I want this to be able to be used across the board. So if you have any trouble with making these percentages kind of work, again, just reach out because I would love to help. When you have your budget in place, the rest of your planning is a lot easier to happen because it's very clear on what's going to fit into each area. And if it doesn't fit in, you can't do it because we're responsible girlies. We are not irresponsible. Okay, so now we're going to get into the priorities. I had mentioned a little bit when I was breaking down all of these costs that different people have different priorities. So some people may care a lot about floral, and some people may care a lot about their band or their DJ. Maybe they want to spend a lot more in flying a DJ out, and that's like their thing. So if that's the case, then you want to scale the numbers. So start with what I said, write it down, figure out what your numbers are. And then if you are really dead set on flying in DJ so-and-so from wherever, then scale the numbers, but don't increase in one area and not decrease in another. You have to make it make sense. And also don't be unrealistic with your scaling. If you are going to increase in the DJ area and that's just like a big priority to you, that doesn't mean that you don't get to decrease in your aesthetics and your photography, because then you're going to be over budget. So again, it seems like common sense, but the conversations that I have a lot of times with people, I'm like, okay, love, I understand that you spent $8,000 more on your wedding dress than what you were supposed to. We need to make that up, unless you have some secret $8,000 that you're not telling me about. But there again, be honest with your budget. Like you can't lie about those kind of things, and just act like things are just going to work out. Also, when you are going into your planning, you want to have some kind of buffer. As we all know, with any big project, whether it's planning a wedding, renovating a house, any type of like big haul or like project that you're doing, you're going to need a little buffer zone. I personally recommend, if you have $120,000 to spend, go off of 110. Just forget the extra 10 is there. And if there's an emergency or something that comes up, you have a little bit of a cushion. You never want to go into this as your max number and then think that everything is just going to be fine, because there's a lot of things that are out of your control. For one, like this last year, nobody really anticipated there being like tariffs on things, and everything that went on there. So there was a lot of people that needed to increase their pricing, pay for extra shipping. It was unforeseen. Even as far as like wedding gowns, like things like really, it was just unforeseen kind of time. Alterations for your dress. Maybe you have a sudden weight loss or weight gain, or your body's just changing throughout this and you need a lot more alterations than what you thought. What if Mother Nature decides to throw you for a little bit of a loop and you have to have a rain plan in place? Like there's just things that happen that you just don't really know are going to happen. So you want to make sure you do have a little bit of that cushion there. Okay, also, when we are going through this, I want to really go over some common misconceptions in the wedding world that can derail your budget at all. Derail your budget as well. There are things like booking your venue before you're understanding your overall costs is a huge mistake, because I've had people come to me that already have their wedding venue booked, and their wedding venue is as much as their entire budget, but they didn't quite understand what the food and beverage minimum was in comparison to what the actual spend was. They didn't understand the service fees, the taxes, and that's just a big bummer because there's a lot of other things that need to be spent. So you have to figure that part out. Also understanding that labor costs are high. They're high in floral, they're high in rentals and delivery, they're high in lighting and AV. Labor costs are very, very high, especially right now. I am not saying this to say that they are too high. I'm saying this to say that people don't understand completely how much goes into the labor side of things, and it can really throw you off when you're trying to calculate numbers. For instance, when people are doing like a floral budget, they'll see, okay, their floral came to 8,000, but their total bill is like 12,000 because of labor and delivery, and they're like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. Like, that's $3,000 over. Like, we need to take that off, and people just don't understand that like floral comes in about a week before your wedding. There's 40 hours in a week that's going into prep and make sure the florals are all ready. Then there's like the assembly and structure and putting that together, not to mention the day of crew that's actually setting everything up. And then not to mention the crew that comes back at the end of the night when you're already whisked away on to happily ever after, that's then cleaning everything up. So lots and lots and lots of costs in labor. I think 10 years ago, weddings were a little bit more simple and didn't come with a lot of custom builds, productions, and things like that. So this whole labor component as far as cost goes is throwing people for a loop a lot of times, but they're not understanding how much is really going into creating all of these things on wedding day. And then comparing budgets without comparing guest count. So we live in a world right now where everybody is able to talk to everybody, and that's great and that's beautiful because you get so much insight on life in general. But you can't talk to one person and they're like, oh yeah, I used that florist and it was 10,000 for my floral, so I don't know why yours is 40. Well, how many guests did you have? What was the floral details? Like, what was going on here? Just because the bottom line is a different number, it doesn't mean that it's comparable. Like, let's scroll up on the invoice and see like what all the different things are. And that goes for everything, really. It's like some people will say like, oh, well, that venue only charged me this much, so I got a deal. Like, no, you didn't. You had 20 guests and this person has 180. Like, it's different things. So make sure you're not comparing budgets. Oh, also another thing too, I had a girl, one of our brides right now, she was struggling with overall costs for what things were. And she's like, well, my sister got married in 2020 and she only spent $30,000 on her wedding. Yes, this is true. But remember, in 2020, the world had shut down and anybody that was still in business was literally slashing their prices to be whatever they could possibly do it just to stay in business and maintain client flow. So yes, getting married in 2020 was a whole other price structure than what we're dealing with right now. So again, you can't compare budgets when there's a drastic time difference, drastic guest count difference, drastic style difference. It's all going to be very different. So now that that is said, and we've kind of gone through all the ins and outs of learning how to create your own budget, I just want to say that budgeting does not mean restriction or that you're going without or that your wedding is going to be less than important, less than pretty, less than fun. That's not the case. It just means that you need to be smart going into things and you need to have a good balance with everything. It's about doing the work ahead of time to avoid the crash out later. So don't look at budget as being like an icky conversation or an icky task to do. It's so important. And when you understand where your money is going and you understand what decisions you can actually responsibly make, life just turns out so much better. So keep that in mind. You just don't want to feel down about doing this. Again, I've said a couple of times throughout this episode, if you have any questions with budgeting, please don't be shy to reach out. There's a lot of things that I can help with because I've done this for so many years. So you're definitely going to want to get some guidance on your budget creation. Once your budget is in place, the rest of wedding goes a lot smoother. I'm not going to say you're not going to have any stress. You'll still have stressful times, but it'll go a lot smoother. So thank you so much for walking down the aisle with us. Make sure to join us every single Tuesday as a new episode releases on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Please be sure to give us a good rating and a 5-star review. Thanks so much.